So I have some very bad news for Nintendo, which is in turn really good news for gamers. What's going on, y'all? It's the Daily Pleb here. Make sure to like and sub for more content. Nintendo was just dealt a big blow in its battle against Palworld. The patents of which Nintendo is relying on aren't looking too solid. I am happy to see this, y'all. Nintendo has been so anti-consumer. It has been, comedic level of just bad guy energy. It's been awful. All the way from going after emulators to ROMs of games they're never going to remake, that they're never going to see another dime on, to just being, completely just unlikable. But let's get into the article. It would be hard to blame Nintendo for becoming used to getting its way when it comes to the courts. Case after case, the Japanese behemoth crushes its prey, scoring millions in damages. But when it comes to the increasingly complex attempt to take down the enormous success of creature collecting survival game Palworld, Nintendo has just taken a big blow, being denied a vital patent. It has been interesting to see Nintendo bend over backwards to try to find a way to screw over Pocketpair and Palworld. And I would say Palworld is a game that far exceeds the scope of Pokemon. In Pokemon, you collect creatures, you battle gym bosses, you get the badges, and that's it. Palworld has so much more to offer. There are caves where there's cave bosses, and you can collect the rare items within the caves. You can build stuff. You can build awesome bases. You can build factories, right? You can have so many different factory ideas and layouts. You can battle other humans. You have the tower bosses, you have the open world bosses, you have, bases of enemies like the Free Pal Alliance and the Syndicate. They have their own bases throughout the world that you can take down. The game offers so much more than what Pokemon, currently offers. And you would think they would try to at least take something from Palworld to make Pokemon better, but they would rather just, get rid of their competition through litigation. But back to the article. In one of the more peculiar twists of the lengthy battle between Pokemon owners, Nintendo, and Palworld creators, Pocketpair, Nintendo submitted a few new or revised patents to the courts to attempt to retroactively claim rights to specific gaming mechanics. While some might very sensibly consider the idea of gaming mechanics being something someone could patent as, I don't even know what that means, anathema to all of art and creativity, and to be ranked hypocrisy in an industry that's entirely built on top of mechanics created by previous generations, it's still somehow a thing. I'm sorry, y'all, I've been on X too long. My brain cells are dying. Please bear with me. And a thing Nintendo was rather heavily relying on in its court case against Palworld. It is true. The fact that you can't even patent game mechanics has just been wild. The Nemesis system from Shadow of War was so interesting. I love the fact that if you got killed by a boss, the game wasn't over. The boss only got more powerful, and he would bring up the battle with you. The fact that you could kill an enemy and he would come back and he would know you. You would create these storylines within the game that was just so, it felt real, right? It felt like it was your story, and it was just revolutionary. And it's a shame that they was able to patent it. But I think in Nintendo's case, where they're retroactively trying to patent game mechanics, is even more ridiculous. But let's continue on. When Palworld first appeared in January 2024, pretty much everyone's reaction was to laugh at the absolutely blatant copies of very familiar Pokemon that appeared in the game. It seems Nintendo wanted to take action, but suing over patches of their characters is a tricky business. So 8 months later, the company instead opted for going after Palworld's creature capturing mechanics, throwing an orb and then captures the animal that are most familiar from Pokemon games. I always thought it was funny about talking about Palworld copying Pokemon. And it's like most of the Pokemon are just animals. You want to copyright a bee? Oh my god. I don't know, I always found that ridiculous. And it's only getting weirder. When we finally got the details of the lawsuit in November of last year, it became apparent that Nintendo and the Pokemon Company were suing for less than $70,000, and the basis for the case were all patents the company had filed in that year. Isn't that ridiculous? Like, if I was a judge or anybody looking over this case, I would immediately throw it out just on that part alone. Like, it's just so scummy that Nintendo would do this. Of course, it's nothing different from what they usually do, but After Palworld had been released, 3 patents were cited. The first based on throwing a Pokeball to start combat. The second, a tweak of an older patent to update it to capturing Pokemon in the wild. And a third, the most extraordinary, to claim the rights for a simple transition into rideable creatures in open worlds. That is so stupid. You ever played Red Dead and got on a horse? Pokemon came out with it first. You ever played GTA and got in a car? Well, Pokemon started it first. That's such a retarded idea, and I can't believe that they even tried to get away with it. And to be fair, they probably thought they could, considering, they screw over the consumers at every other possible turn anyway. But with that being said, y'all, that's going to be the end of this video. If you made it to the end, like and sub for more. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye-bye now.